protecting Main Street from Wall Street. It's time for Money Unleashed with Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn.
You have to have a plan where you know if the market's going to go up, what happens next. And you also have to have a plan where if it doesn't go the way you think, you know what you're going to do.
It's time to put you back in control of your money.
I'm not trying to predict the weather, which is kind of what we're talking about, right? It's predicting the stock market. I'm trying to build a better boat.
This is Money Unleashed with Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn.
Welcome to Money Unleashed with Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn. It's powered by the Hoffman Financial Group. Each week, we're bringing you new episodes, so make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast. Just search for Money Unleashed. We're talking about wealth in the house. Why don't you take this one and talk about what you read in the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah, and I don't want to get too deep into the negative of all this, but if we've known recently there's been these fires out in California.
Yes.
And it's just massive
very
devastation.
Unfortunate.
So
very unfortunate.
It's just an awful thing, and I actually have a personal connection to some of it. I have some family out there, and so talking about it, looking at it, I stumbled on this article in the Wall Street Journal that talked about how a lot of baby boomers have, because of interest rates being low, held on to houses because of the price appreciation. And so then they ended up in a position, a lot of these people that live in places like Palisades, California, where the predominant amount of wealth was in their home, not in their bank account, not in their investment account. And then all of a sudden it goes up in smoke, right?
It's terrible.
The house burns. So it's these wild stories. And so I pulled a couple of them. And what I want to talk about is this idea of how do financial advisors, financial planners, financial fiduciaries help people with the ancillary things, not just Wall Street of the world, but also the extras, because these are just devastating conversations. There was this lady, her name was Sylvia Sweeney. She was 69 years old. She worked at a church. She bought a home in 2009 for $780,000, and it was worth $1.6 million recently. She's lost that home.
Man, that's terrible.
So one of the things that you're looking at here is someone who's saying, hey, my net worth, my wealth, my price accumulation is wrapped in my home, and now all of a sudden it's been decimated. There was another gentleman, he was 77 years old. He was told the insurance would cover $800,000 to build, and now they're in a position where all they can afford is a $2,200 a month mortgage. And if you look at the typical worth of a home in Palisades, California, it's $3.4 million.
That's not going to go too far, is it?
It's not. So what I want to bring out here is I don't want to dwell on this misfortune, and I don't even want to talk about necessarily that, homes burned down, because the fact is sometimes things happen in life, and that's just a part of it. You go through hardships, you go through positives, and so it's kind of always moving. But what it really made me think about is, are we doing, our financial advisors, financial fiduciaries, insurance professionals, stockbrokers, CPAs, whoever you're working with, are we doing a good job of talking about the things outside of Wall Street?
You should be.
You should be.
And what I think this topic is outlining is a couple different things. First one, you definitely don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. Over history and over time, real estate's been a really safe, good investment. But man, stuff happens, right? A fire's going to happen, right? And a hurricane's going to hit. Like, I'm from South Florida, it's hurricanes down there, right? Not a lot of fires, but could be a fire, could be an earthquake, could be just Mother Nature doing her thing, right? And when you have too much exposure in one area, that can be a problem. So for instance, for Miss Sweeney and this other gentleman, if the majority of your wealth is wrapped up in your home, that's a problem if something happens to your home, for sure. And I hope that the insurance companies do the right thing, and I hope they get back on their feet, because it's such a terrible tragedy over there. So that's number one. You don't want all your eggs in one basket. Now, to answer your question, should people be talking about these types of investments as well? And the answer is absolutely, resoundingly 110% yes. Literally just yesterday, I had a gentleman come in, and he was telling me about his situation. We're doing a portfolio x-ray with him, and he had a nice-sized portfolio, but he also had a nice-sized real estate portfolio. I mean, he has primary residence. He still had a mortgage on, great interest rate. He also had a lake house, amazing lake house in Lake Lanier, also great interest rate. But then he also had 2 Airbnbs in Athens, right? His 2 sons going to school were living in one, and he was renting the other one out and making approximately $12,000, $13,000 a year. And the first thing he said to me is like, hey, when I asked him, hey, what are you spending a month? He said, oh man, we're probably at the minimum, $13,000. I'm like, let's make it 15 just in case. And he starts talking to me about retirement, and you talking about the consolidation of his portfolio, and just instead of so many different accounts, he wanted it in just one spot, which makes a lot of sense. And I was like, you really need to look at that with your homes as well, too. I mean, we've got, 4 mortgages going on right now? I was like, so you want to make that easier for yourself in retirement, but additionally, when it comes to real estate, you want to do the same thing. I was like, so how long till your boys get out of school? He's like, about a year and a half. I'm like, okay, well, then what? do you have to have those? He goes, it could be good income generation. I'm like, yeah, but you got 2 other mortgages on your primary residence and your lake house. I mean, you got to keep both, or which one do you want to, wind up? And he goes, well, we want to wind up in the lake house. I'm like, okay, well, keep the Airbnb because that's obviously paying for your boy's house, and your boy has a roommate, and that's, covering the cost for that house. But when they're graduated and they're out of Athens, I was like, why don't you sell those 2 and then pay off the lake house, and you still have a very reasonable mortgage on your primary residence, and now your castle for the future is taken care of and paid off. And now whenever you decide to move into the lake house, you just take the proceeds from your, primary residence, pay off the mortgage through, selling the house, and then you add that to your portfolio and create more income. And his jaw dropped. He goes, man, I've been thinking about that for like 3 years. I was like, well, your gut was right. So yes, you do need to be talking about those situations because, having too much real estate could be an issue in retirement. But if you condense it down and get your castle taken care of, which a lot of people want to do, they don't want to have a mortgage in retirement, which is fair. But you need to be talking about those things as well, not just the growing of the portfolio itself, because all the assets matter to a fiduciary.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring it up in that direction because sometimes we go in the other direction. I was working with a gentleman and he had a portfolio that he didn't really have any real estate holdings. And so he came to me and he said, look, my house is, we downsized. We had the big house. We downsized into the smaller home. But what we really want is a lake home. And so we kind of moved all our assets into the marketplace. We moved them into the stocks and the bonds and the mutual funds and the ETFs of the world. Can we go in the other direction? Right? So he called me up and he said, listen, I'm in a position. He was actually a pilot down in Orlando. He worked for Southwest. And he called me up and he said, you know what we really want? We want a house in Blue Ridge. His daughter lives in Charlotte. So when they head up to see her, they love the idea of kind of stopping halfway. He's also a golfer, so he loves going up to Old Toccoa up there and playing some golf. There's also Macklemore. So he's like, hey, how would this work if we decided to take some of the money that we have in the marketplace and buy a home, right? So in their case, they had the ability to do something like that. And so when we looked at it, we said, hey, we're trading one asset for the other because your family's going to get to be able to enjoy this time together in the mountains. You're going to be able to play some golf. You're going to have a respite for, all the stress you got going on as a high-level executive down at Southwest. But, you can go in both directions, right? Sometimes you're selling real estate to move it back into the market. Sometimes you're selling market assets to move back into the real estate. And so I think the key point we're driving home here is if you're working with an individual that is only focused on making you money, talking about the stock market, and they're not looking at the other things. They're not looking at Social Security. They're not looking at real estate. They're not looking at pensions. I would just argue that's a huge mistake because then you put yourself in a position where you've focused in on one thing, and that one thing may not be the whole story. I love this discussion I heard one time from Jocko Willink, who is a Navy SEAL. I'm a big fan of Jocko. He has a podcast and a book, and Chris actually got to interview him a few years ago, and he tells this story of being out in training after he had completed his buds. So he's a new Navy SEAL, right? So he's a baby Navy SEAL. He just got through the door. He's a little nervous, but he knows he's a Navy SEAL, so he's allowed to speak up. And they're out on the training field, and he's looking down the barrel of his gun. He's looking down the sight of the gun, and he notices that no one is calling out the direction that the unit should be going in. Everyone's silent. And he pauses for a second. He takes his eye off the target. He looks around, and when he looks around, he realizes they need to go up and to the right. So he just calls it. He says, okay, up and to the right. So they make the move. They move through the course. They're doing their thing. They get in the debrief room, and all of a sudden, one of the senior SEALs, one of the big wigs, goes, Willink. And he's like, uh-oh, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have called up and to the right. And he goes, great call. And so he tells this story often because what he's trying to get at is sometimes you're so focused down the barrel of the gun, at the sight, at the target, that you don't see all the other things that are going on. And so his argument is at any point in time, if you're looking for clarity, take your eye off the target, pause, look around, and then once you've looked around, you start to see all the other things. So if you are just looking at Wall Street, if you're just looking at the stock market, there's a really good chance you're missing all the other connective pieces that are deriving, whether it be income protection or growth.
Well, number one, I love Jocko. You and I have had the pleasure of meeting him and listening to him speak. That guy's a stud. Got to love my SEALs, man. I'm an ex-Navy guy too, so got to tip my hat to old Jocko, and I love that story you brought up. But it sounds like to me what you're saying is you need a full financial plan, right? And not just a stock plan. You need a real estate plan. You need an estate planning plan. You need a tax plan. You need to look at all the things, not just down the barrel of the gun that you're talking about. And we do that for people. And listen, we want to take care of our listeners and help you get this type of financial plan put in place for you and your family. And guys, at Hoffman Financial Group, we designed these plans specifically for you at no cost and no obligation. Kyle, talk to me about what goes into these financial plans we do.
Yeah, I want to give you one specifically. So another thing that I think people put into in a vacuum, or they're just looking at the one thing by itself, is Social Security, right? So sometimes people come in. I would argue it's the first building block of that financial plan, but I would argue that often people are looking at it totally alone. And so they come in and they go, I'm going to take my Social Security early because I don't believe I'm going to live very long, or I'm going to wait on my Social Security because it gets to be a bigger number. And both of those statements could be true. The question is not, do you make more money because you wait? You do. It rolls up by 8% each year. The question is not, would you make more money if you passed away before your mortality date, say at 82 or 83, and you took it early? That's true. The question is, how does it fit with the other things in the portfolio? If you're going to take your Social Security early or late, how does that fit with your real estate holdings? If you're going to take your Social Security at full retirement age, FRA, how does that fit with your stock holdings? So, you've got to look at everything together. I would say that the first building block is going to be Social Security.
Yep.
You mentioned another big one, which is taxes. I think often, we all get tired, right? You do something for a while and you get tired. You get to that fifth or sixth piece of pizza and you're like, man, I don't want any more pizza.
Doesn't taste as good as the first piece, does it?
That's right. So taxes are that. You get to the end of the financial plan and you've worked on Social Security, you've worked on market elements, you've worked on protection, and you just run out of gas. Well, we are not going to run out of gas for you. We're going to come back in, and so we're going to start with Social Security. We're also going to finish with taxes. So do you have a plan to maximize the money that's coming in from a standpoint of taxation?
Man, you just nailed what goes into a full financial plan, and we'll put that financial plan together for you at no cost. Give us a call, and let's get you set up with that today. 404-640-5511. That's 404-640-5511. Or you can hop online at unleashyourmoney.com and reach out to us that way as well.
Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn are investment advisor representatives of Brookstone Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor and affiliate of Brookstone Capital Management, LLC. BWA and Hoffman Financial Group are affiliated under common ownership. Registered investment advisors and investment advisor representatives act as fiduciaries for all of our investment management clients. We have an obligation to act in the best interest of our clients and to make full disclosures of any conflicts of interest. Please refer to our firm brochure, the ADV 2A, page 4, for additional information. The Hoffman Financial Group and WSB are not affiliated. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. This information should not be considered tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a professional specializing in the field of tax, legal, accounting, or investments regarding the applicability of this information for their situation. Any client experiences discussed during the show are unique to that client. They are not meant to imply or suggest you will experience the same results. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments will fluctuate and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Any comments regarding safe and secure products and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Fixed insurance and annuity product guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing company and are not offered by Brookstone. Index or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract. Please refer to our firm brochure, the ADV 2A, item 4, for additional information. Hoffman Financial Group is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Insurance licensed in Georgia, number 163546.